Welcome to a world of shock, spectacle, and the strange, where the boundaries of human biology met the roar of applause and the gaze of millions. Today we're diving deep into the top 10 craziest circus freaks in history, the men, women, and children whose lives became legends beneath the spotlight. Let's get weird. Number 10. Schlitzie the Pinhead. Schlitzie was born in the early 1900s. No one really knows the exact year and was diagnosed with microcephaly, a condition where the skull is abnormally small. In the sensational language of the sideshow world, that meant he was dubbed a pinhead. His mental development was also limited, often compared to that of a 3- or 4-year-old. But Schlitzie wasn't just paraded around like an oddity. He performed, he clapped, danced, sang, and even wore frilly dresses to add to his character's mystique, sometimes being introduced as a girl from far-off Mongolian or Aztec tribes. It was wildly inaccurate, but the mystique helped sell tickets. He toured with major acts, including the Ringling Brothers and the Tom Mix Circus, and even gained pop culture immortality with a role in the cult classic 1932 film Freaks, where he was part of the now iconic chant, "One of us, one of us." Number 9. The Elephant Man. At number 9, we find one of the most haunting and poetic figures ever to grace the history books, Joseph Merrick, known worldwide as the Elephant Man. Born in 1862 in Leicester, England, Merrick's early life was anything but ordinary. He developed tumors across his skin and bone overgrowths that gave him a deeply asymmetrical body. His skull grew so large and deformed that he could barely lie down to sleep. He had difficulty speaking, walking, even breathing, but none of that stopped the world from turning him into a walking exhibit. He was deeply articulate, gentle, and intelligent. In fact, when he was eventually taken in by Dr. Frederick Trevis at the London hospital, it was discovered that Merrick had a love for literature and poetry. He was no sideshow act, he was a trapped soul inside a twisted body. Number 8. Lobster Boy. Now, brace yourself, because number 8 is straight out of a true crime docu-series. Meet Grady Stiles Jr., also known as Lobster Boy. Born in 1937 with ectrodactyly, a condition that fuses fingers and toes into claw-like shapes, Grady was part of a multi-generational freak show dynasty. His father also had the condition and performed under the same name, making Grady a second-generation Lobster Boy. With his sharp claws and twisted limbs, Grady couldn't walk, so he used his arms to drag himself across the floor. But what he lacked in mobility, he made up for in sheer performance energy. He became a sideshow headliner, making money hand over claw for decades. But Grady's story takes a seriously dark turn. Outside the spotlight, he was a violent alcoholic who abused his family. His hands, although deformed, were lethal. He developed immense upper body strength from years of dragging himself around, and when enraged, he was terrifying. Number 7. The original Siamese Twins. At number 7, we go all the way back to where the term Siamese Twins began. 𝐃𝐨𝐵𝐿 and 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐵𝐿, the most famous conjoined twins in history. Born in 1811 in Siam, modern-day Thailand, the brothers were connected at the sternum by a thick band of flesh and a shared liver. Discovered by a Scottish merchant while swimming as teens, they were quickly snatched up and taken on tour across the globe, beginning one of the most remarkable lives in 19th century showbiz. They performed across America and Europe in the 1820s and 30s, twisting, turning, doing gymnastics, and charming audiences with synchronized wit and humor. Their act wasn't just about the body, it was about the charisma. But here's the twist. When they retired, they didn't vanish into obscurity. They thrived. The brothers settled in North Carolina, became U.S. citizens, bought land, and even owned slaves. A morally complex and deeply ironic chapter in their story. But it gets even more bizarre. They married 2 sisters, moved into neighboring houses, and alternated nights with each wife. Between them, they fathered 21 children. That's right, 21. Number 6. The Bearded Lady. Number 6 gives us one of the most enduring and recognizable figures in circus history. The Bearded Lady, and the queen of them all, was Annie Jones. Born in 1865, Annie sprouted a beard by the age of 5. Rather than hide her daughter from the world, her mother saw an opportunity, one that caught the attention of none other than P.T. Barnum. Barnum immediately hired her, renaming her the Infant Esau, referencing the hairy figure from the Bible. Annie became a celebrity before most kids even knew how to read. She traveled the country, dazzling audiences with her long, flowing beard, her elegant wardrobe, and her composed, graceful demeanor. But Annie wasn't content to just be looked at. She used her fame to advocate for better treatment of people labeled as freaks. She famously lobbied to eliminate the word from promotional materials, preferring human curiosities or natural wonders. For her, this wasn't just a gig, it was a mission. Number 5. The Half-Man, Half-Woman. At number 5, we meet a performer who didn't just bend gender norms, they split them right down the middle. Say hello to the legendary Half-Man, Half-Woman act. This wasn't just drag. This wasn't a costume. This was half of one body dressed as a tuxedoed man, the other half decked out in full feathered glamour, with makeup, heels, and all the flair of a Broadway star. And when they stepped on stage, they didn't just walk, they sang, in two different voices. One side would belt a baritone note, the other a high-pitched soprano, in perfect theatrical harmony. It was like watching a duet with one body, a mind-bending, gender-smashing, jaw-dropping performance that made 1800s audiences whisper, "Is that even real?" These acts went by many names: Josephine Joseph, Alberto Vera, and others, depending on the region or the circus. Some were intersex, others simply masters of illusion. But the effect was always the same, a mind-boggling spectacle that forced the audience to confront their assumptions about gender, identity, and performance. Number 4. The Human Skeleton, Isaac W. Sprague. If you thought thinspo culture started with Instagram, you haven't met. Number 4. Isaac W. Sprague, better known as the Living Skeleton. Born in 1841 in Massachusetts, Isaac was a perfectly healthy child until his early teens, when he began to lose weight and never stopped. No matter how much he ate, his body simply couldn't retain mass. By adulthood, he weighed a mere 43 pounds, and he was over 5 feet 6 inches tall. Doctors were baffled. Today, we might chalk it up to extreme muscular atrophy or an undiagnosed metabolic disorder. Back then, they just called him the Human Skeleton and sent him straight to the Barnum circuit. Isaac toured with the likes of P.T. Barnum and wowed audiences across the country. He was billed as the thinnest man alive, and crowds couldn't believe their eyes. You could count every rib, every bone, every joint under paper-thin skin. He posed beside the circus's fat lady in stark contrast, an image that posters milked for all it was worth. Number 3. 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐞 the Dog-Faced Boy. At number 3, we meet the performer who blurred the line between man and myth. Introducing 𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐺, better known as 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐞 the Dog-Faced Boy. Born in 1868 in Russia, 𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐺 had hypertrichosis, a rare condition that caused his entire face, and most of his body, to be covered in thick fur-like hair. He wasn't just bearded, he looked like a real-life werewolf, and for 19th century crowds, that was prime freak show fuel. His father, who also had the condition, toured as the hairy man of Siberia and taught 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐺 the ropes. But when his father died, young 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐺 was taken under the wing of P.T. Barnum, who promptly cranked the volume to 11. Barnum rebranded him as 𝐬𝐻𝐸𝐺 the Dog-Faced Boy, a savage from the Russian wilderness, raised by wolves who barked, snarled, and growled on command. The story was fake, of course, but the audiences ate it up. People would gasp when he opened his mouth, expecting barks, only to hear eloquent, polite English. Number 2. The Four-Legged Girl, Myrtle Corbin. Coming in at number 2 is a woman with a medical anomaly so rare, she literally stopped traffic. Meet Myrtle Corbin, the four-legged girl from Texas. Born in 1868, Myrtle had a condition known as diphagus, which essentially meant her body tried to split into conjoined twins, but didn't finish the job. She had 2 separate pelvises and 4 legs. 2 of them were hers. The other 2, smaller, weaker, and non-functional, but very real. By the time she was a teenager, Myrtle was already being paraded around the country. Her promotional posters showed her in ruffled dresses, often holding her parasol and smiling. Crowds flocked to see the girl who looked like 2 people fused into one. But here's the kicker. Myrtle wasn't just a sideshow marvel, she was a total professional. She insisted on classy wardrobe, performed with grace and poise, and maintained strict control over how she was portrayed. In an age of exploitation, she set her own terms. Number 1, the Fiji Mermaid, the greatest hoax in circus history. And finally, at number 1, we end with a performer who wasn't even real. That's right, the wildest circus freak in history might just be a taxidermy lie. Say hello to the infamous Fiji Mermaid. Back in the mid-1800s, showman extraordinaire P.T. Barnum unveiled what he claimed was a real mermaid. Caught in the exotic waters off Fiji, the creature was horrifying, mummified, with a skeletal face, clawed hands, and a grotesque fishtail. Posters promised a stunning, siren-like beauty. The reality? A nightmare creature that looked like it crawled out of hell, but still people lined up around the block. What they didn't know was that the Fiji Mermaid was a fraud, a clever taxidermy mashup of a juvenile monkey and a fish, stitched together and aged with papier-mâché and paint. It wasn't discovered until years later, but by then, Barnum had already made his fortune. These performers lived at the edge of human experience. Some were exploited, others celebrated, and most lived lives more complex than the banners would ever admit. Behind the sideshow lights were real people, each with a story stranger, sadder, and more inspiring than any fiction. If you thought this list was wild, wait till you see our video on the most bizarre human experiments in history. Smash that like button, subscribe, and stay weird. We'll see you in the next one.